أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والسيد المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين المنتجبين لا سيما مولانا وسيدي صاحب العصر والزمان روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء وأجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف ولعنة دائمة على أعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. For the hastening of the advent of our 12th Imam, Imam al-Hujjah, one salawat upon Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. My dear brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before I begin with the main theme for tonight, which is the birth anniversary of Fadhl Al-Abbas, the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, I want to do a bit of a quick discussion on the ahkam, on the fiqh that we had been discussing for a few weeks, and I took a bit of a break over the last few weeks, and I wanted to inshallah continue that today and continue in some of the discussions that we've been going on. And for those who recall, and hopefully you're not fasting because that picture might make you a bit hungry at this time of the day, but we have been going over the rules of food and drink, and we had talked about how it is important for us as believers to ensure the intake of what we consume. And we talked about, even last night, the importance of the food that we eat, how if we eat impermissible, that this can become a barrier between ourselves and Allah. And we talked about even the statement of Sayyid al-Shuhada on the day of Ashura, where the enemy forces had their stomachs full of the haram, and so they were not able to perceive realities around them. And so when it comes to what we consume, we have to be of the utmost precautionary nature to ensure that we are eating only that which is permissible or halal from the religious perspective. And so I wanted to share just 2 or 3 rulings this evening on this particular topic. The first one, and this is actually a continuation from what we had discussed a few weeks back about meat that we purchase from a Muslim. So we had talked about, from a non-Muslim, from Ahlul Kitab, non-Ahlul Kitab. And last time we talked about from a Muslim where we purchase meat from. And Ayatul Sistani mentions the following, that if a Muslim buys, actually let me just go back one slide, sorry. Maybe we'll go there. If a Muslim knows, so you as a Muslim, you know, and you are sure that the meat is from the meat which you buy from another Muslim is from an animal which is permissible for Muslims to eat. For example, the cow, sheep, chicken, these are animals which are halal for consumption, but they have to obviously be slaughtered in the proper way for them to be halal for us to consume. So if a Muslim knows and is sure that the meat is from an animal that is permissible to eat, and you get it from another Muslim, but that animal was not slaughtered according to the Islamic laws, then that meat is to be considered as mayta. And mayta, he says, is not permissible for a Muslim to eat, even if you buy it from a Muslim. Meaning that even if you go to a Muslim restaurant or a butcher shop, and they're Muslims, and they tell you that they're Muslim, but then they tell you that the process which they use to slaughter the meat, or where they buy the meat, or the beef, or the chicken, or whatever it is, doesn't go through the process that our Sharia, our fiqh, the fiqh of Ahlul Bayt, deems as being the permissible way, even if that person is a Muslim, that meat is still haram to purchase and haram to consume. So even if it's from a Muslim, that doesn't mean you can still eat it. Obviously, unfortunately, we see that product in the name of being halal, but when you ask them, or sometimes they voluntarily divulge their sources, and you find out that this is not a permissible means of slaughtering of an animal. So as the Sayyid says, that is mayta, and mayta is not only impure, but it is also haram to eat. And he says, similarly, such meat is impure and would make other things impure if it comes into wet contact with it. So again, it's not enough just for a person to say, I'm a Muslim. If they tell you, for example, as it happened to me in a local restaurant, the brother says, you know what, I don't go into that kind of depth in terms of investigation. He said, this is a business, we're in it for the money. And when a person says they're in it for the money and they're not looking at the legal perspective of what they are selling to a fellow Muslim, then we have to be concerned about that establishment. That person could be the best of Muslims, they could be attending prayers, they could have the biggest of beards, all of the characteristics of a Muslim, but if they don't follow the principle of slaughter, then that meat is impure and it is not permissible for us to consume. So Sayyid Sistani makes it clear on this regard that it is not enough to just be a Muslim, they have to follow the requirements of the fiqh in the process of how that meat is slaughtered. The second rule states the following, that if a Muslim, so if one of us, we go and we buy something, or we receive some meat from a non-Muslim, or from a Muslim who themselves got it from a non-Muslim, and they didn't inquire about how the meat was slaughtered, according to Islamic laws, he says such meat is haram. So if a non-Muslim you purchase from them and you don't ask the method of slaughter, maybe it has a sticker that says halal. According to Sayyid Sistani, that sticker in and of itself has no intrinsic value to it. A sticker doesn't mean anything. Anybody can print a label that says halal on it, as we have seen has happened in many parts of the world. So if a Muslim buys or receives from a non-Muslim or from a Muslim, but you didn't ask the right questions, he says that that meat is haram. But he says if the Muslim does not know that the animal was not slaughtered according to the Islamic rules, it wouldn't be considered najis, but it still would be haram to consume. So there are two separate issues. The meat being najis, if you touch it, your hands become impure, you have to make taharat of your hand or your clothes or your kitchen or whatever. And there's another issue of the meat being haram. But in either case, as the Sayyid says, basically you are not permitted to eat that particular product. And last but not least, as it relates to fish, fish is permissible for a Muslim. All creatures that come from the sea, generally speaking, are allowed for us to consume, as long as they fulfill two conditions. One is that the fish has to have scales, and if you don't know, ask Google. Google knows the answers to everything, apparently. And if Google doesn't know, if you go to any of the sites of the Jewish community, the Jewish community have the exact same rule, that their fish that they eat has to have scales. So for example, lobster is haram, crab is haram, oysters are haram, squid is haram. All of these things are forbidden. Only those fish that have scales, which you can ask internet, you can look in the appropriate books, those are permissible. And rule number 2 is that the fish should have come out of the ocean or the water alive. Now obviously we don't know because they catch thousands of fish in a net. But Sayyid Sistani says because traditionally speaking, this is how fishing is done in the West, you can presume that all of it is okay and that there isn't any of that which died in the water and that they pulled out. So basically those are the two criteria for fish. For any of the seafood rather, that it has to have scales, it has to have come out of the water alive, and it doesn't matter if it's a Muslim or a non-Muslim who is the fisherman. There's no zabiha for a fish, there's no facing towards Qibla and all of that. As long as it comes out of the water alive, has scales, it is okay for us to eat. Salu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We ask Allah to give us the tawfiq to be able to fulfill our obligations to the deen. We ask Allah to be able to allow us to follow the teachings of Islam as taught by Muhammad and Ali Muhammad, and that we can make sure that we make the important choices when we go to our groceries and our supermarkets, that we only purchase that which is halal, which is tayyib, which is pure and wholesome for ourselves and our families, because ultimately at the end of the day this will have an impact on our souls and our connection to the Imam of our time, Imam al-Hujjah, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. This evening, as we've gathered together to celebrate the second of 4 very important birth anniversaries in the month of Sha'aban, as we mentioned last night, for those who are here as a recap, that Sha'aban is the only month within the religious calendar in which there are no martyrdom anniversaries, no shahadats, no death anniversaries of any of the important personalities within our tradition. And that this is a month full of mercy, of blessings of these great wiladat, these on the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th. And obviously on the 15th of the month, where we commemorate the birth of our Imam and our awaited Savior, Imam al-Hujjah, we see that this month is one full of barakat and blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And incidentally, when you look at these 3 wiladats that we are going through over these 3 days, it's interesting how these 3 personalities, their births are marked one after the other. And that all 3 of them had a tremendous role and impact in the event of Karbala. And as we know that Karbala, for us, is really our lifeline. Karbala is, what we as the Shias identify as, and what we are identified as being adherents to. Meaning that when people ask about us, they ask, and they realize that as Shias, we commemorate the martyrdom of Sayyid al-Shuhada alayhi salam. And that this has become such a key identifier within not only our own community, but even the outside world. And to see that Imam Hussain is born on the 3rd, his brother Fadhl Al-Abbas, who was beside him on the day of Ashura on the 4th, and then Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam, who continued and protected and safeguarded the message of Rasulullah on the 5th of the month of Sha'aban. This is no coincidence. Things don't happen by chance. But I think Allah plans this in that way, that we are able to celebrate these 3 great personalities, and that we are also able to give each and every one of them the due that they are deserved, when we're able to gather and listen and hear and reflect on these great personalities. And obviously Abul Fadl Al-Abbas alayhi salam, for all of us, holds a special place within our heart. Sometimes, as we had talked about with the birth of Lady Zainab, is that we can't always relate to the Ahlul Bayt, to the Ma'asumeen. Because they're Ma'asum, sometimes for you and I it becomes difficult to put ourselves in their shoes, because they're at such a pinnacle of Iman and perfection. But when we look at individuals like Abul Fadl Al-Abbas alayhi salam, and we realize that he is not of the 14 infallibles, although we don't attribute any inactions to him or any sins to him, but when we reflect on him and his status with his Imam, his brother, and the role that he plays not only in Ashura, but the role he played in Siffin with his father, Amir al-Mu'mineen, the role that he played with within that early period of the Khilafat of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, we seem to be able to take a bit more from his example in life, because he's not of that caliber of Ma'asum, that we can't reach up to him. No, we can reach up to him. We need to study and reflect on his life to see how he gets to be who he is, and then what it is that we can take from the lesson of Abul Fadl Al-Abbas alayhi salam and imbibe within our own lives, that we can become the Abbases of our generation, that we can be those individuals who, when the 12th Imam makes his duhur, that we can be those who had followed Abbas in our life, and that we can be like Abbas was to Hussain, that we can be the same to our Imam and our awaited Savior, Imam al-Hujjah, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Abul Fadl Abbas was born, as we know, on the 4th of Sha'aban in the year the 26th after the Hijrah. And his mother, who also had the same name as the first wife of Amir al-Mu'mineen, which is Fatima, and as we know later on she becomes known as Banin. She also has a very interesting history. I don't want to dwell too much on her tonight, but just to realize the fact that after the death of Lady Zahra alayhi salam, even though Imam Ali married many women after that, he had multiple wives after the death of Lady Zahra. And there was actually a wisdom that he was not allowed to marry another woman while he was married to Lady Fatima alayhi salam. But after her death, he marries many different women. And about 15 to 16 years after the death of Fatima Zahra alayhi salam, he marries Fatima, whom we know as Banin. So there's about a 15-year gap, and where he has other wives before he marries Banin. And we know that from Banin alayhi salam, that there are 4 boys that come, and some traditions also mention 1 or 2 daughters. And we know that all 4 of these young men, they bravely give their lives on the day of Ashura for Abu Abdullah Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam, and that all of them are recorded obviously in history as being those valiant and brave warriors who stood beside their Imam and their master. But for some particular reason, only known maybe to Allah and to the Ahlul Bayt alayhim wassalam, although we love and respect all of the companions of Imam Hussain, although we love and respect all of the children of the Imams that were righteous, but for some reason Abul Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam, he has a unique position in history. He has a unique characteristic. And I mean, when you look at Karbala itself, and you see the shrines of Abbas and Hussain alayhim salam, and you see that area known as Bainul Haramain, between the two sacred shrines, you realize the importance of Abul Fadl al-Abbas, that he has a unique, distinct, beautiful shrine that glows, and that is right in the same vicinity as that of his brother Hussain alayhi salatu wassalam. Salu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And in fact, when you look at Abul Fadl al-Abbas and how the other Imams spoke about him, we have a hadith, we have sayings from many of the other Imams where they speak about his status, the status of Abul Fadl al-Abbas. The fourth Imam has a beautiful eulogy he gives about Abul Fadl al-Abbas. The sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq, he comes on the scene and he gives a great tribute to his uncle Abul Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam. But I want to just recount the words of our 12th Imam before I go into the main theme for tonight, and see what it is that our 12th Imam talks about when he speaks about the character and personality of Abul Fadl al-Abbas. And if the 12th Imam says it, you know that it has to carry more weight. He doesn't speak out of emotion. He doesn't speak out of desire. And what he says is a reality, as all of the Imams. But for the 12th Imam to reflect and lament upon what happens in Karbala, as the 12th Imam does in Ziyarat of Naseeha, that I'm sure many of us have recited, we see with what depth and profundity the 12th Imam comes on the scene and talks about the event of Karbala and the individuals that played a role on that day. The 12th Imam says this about Abul Fadl. He says, "My salutations, my salams, my greetings upon Abul Fadl al-Abbas, the son of the commander of the faithful. He preferred his brother over himself." Right? And this is the 12th Imam speaking. He says Abul Fadl al-Abbas preferred his brother Hussain over himself. He made use of the opportunities of that day to earn a reward for the day to come, for the akhirat. So Abul Fadl al-Abbas wasn't thinking about, anything else but protecting and safeguarding his brother. It was all about Hussain alayhi salam. It was all about his Mawla and his master. And what he did on that day, on the 10th of Muharram, was for the future. It was for his own akhirat. He says he sacrificed himself for his brother, and he protected him, and he rushed to fetch the water. And in the process of that, both of his hands were cut. And then he says, "May Allah curse the killers of Abul Fadl al-Abbas." And he goes on to talk about many of the other individuals who took part in the tragedy of Karbala. But to see with what reverence and love and respect Imam al-Hujjah talks about Karbala and about the event and about Abul Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam, should be an indicator to you and I that he is not a normal individual. He's not like any of the other family members of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, although we love and respect them, and we salute them and we greet them when we go to Karbala. But again, Abul Fadl al-Abbas has a unique spot in the love that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam have shown upon him within our ziyarats. Salu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. As we mentioned last night, and I'll reiterate that as we continue our discussion this evening, that when we want to know about an individual, we want to know how their character truly is. It's difficult when you are meeting a person every now and then, or you see them in a religious gathering. But when you really want to know the inner depths of an individual, we had two ways that we talked about last night. Way number one was how they speak. And we mentioned the hadith of Amir al-Mu'mineen where he says, when you want to know the character of a person, you want to know how a person is inside, he says, wait for them to open their mouth and talk. And then you can judge the character of the individual. And so if a person uses profanity, vulgarities, they're rude, they're abrasive, they're harsh, then know and understand that within their heart, they have those same qualities and characteristics. But when you see a person is humble, when they use nice words, when they speak kindly to humanity, to not just Muslims, but people on a whole, when they are, respectful to others, then we have to realize that person is good inside their core, that their inner core is also pure and it is wholesome. And because of that, they are showing respect to other individuals. So that was way number one, was through their own speech. But way number two is what others say about that individual. So when a person says and gives a tribute to another individual, and they are those who are closer to that person, they're their family members, for example, and they speak kindly of their own family, then we know that that person must be a good individual, because the family lives with that person day in and day out. And if they were to see blemishes, if they were to see sins or things on their record, then that would be something which they might indicate to us. And so when we look at Abu Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam, because the history, as we know, has not been kind to the members of Ahlul Bayt alayhum salam, we don't have a lot of the earlier individuals that were there at the time of Rasulullah, at the time of Amir al-Mu'mineen, of the earlier Imams. And so we don't have a lot about what Abu Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam did in his early days. We know that he was born, we know where he was born, we know that he lived in Kufa for the time. We know that after the shahadat of Amir al-Mu'mineen, he goes back to Medina to be with Imam Hassan and Hussain alayhim salam. So we have slight indications about what he was doing in his earlier days. But many of the other day-to-day actions of Abu al-Fadl we don't know about. We don't have many quotations from him, other than maybe his sermons and poetry on the day of Ashura. And so when we look at Abu Fadl al-Abbas, as we will tonight, we want to look at him from the point of view of what others say about him. And not only what others say about him, but what the masters of our religion say about him. And so this evening I want to spend a few moments to reflect on the lines of our sixth Imam, Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq, alayhi salatu was-salam. And how the sixth Imam speaks about Abu Fadl al-Abbas within the ziyarat that he himself used to recite in Karbala. And as we mentioned in the past, and again I want to repeat this point, is that the ziyarats that we have of Ahlul Bayt, alayhum as-salam, they're not just a thing to read, to get it over with, to get it done. We have this mentality sometimes, whether it be in our communities, that we have 7 minutes left, let's just do the ziyarat and get it over with. We just do it. But this isn't a thing that we do. The ziyarat should be something that we live within our lives, something that we actually reflect upon, and that it should make a change in our character when we read the lines of greeting these individuals. There's a historical event which sheds light on this. An individual went to one of the Abbasid Khalifas, and the Abbasids had although they claimed to be from Al-Rasul, but they had a vehement hatred for Al-Rasul. They claimed to be from the family of the Prophet. They claimed to come on the scene to fight Bani Umayyah, to take the rights of Ali Muhammad. But when they came, they did more harm perhaps than good. They did more harm than good to the family of the Prophet. And so an individual goes to one of the Abbasid Khalifas one day, and he says to him, he says that you're building all of these masajid, all of these mosques, you're building all over the Muslim empire, in Baghdad, in Khorasan, and here and there. You're building all of these mosques, but yet you let the haram of Imam Hussain lie in ruin. You don't build a beautiful dome over his grave. Forget about that. You don't even allow people to go to his ziyarah. Why is that? And the Khalifa replied with a very interesting statement. He says, when I build a mosque, when I build a masjid and people come to pray, that's all they do. They come and they pray and they leave. They don't think about Islam. They're not moved into a revolutionary stance. But he says, if I was to build up Karbala, and people were to go to Hussein's shrine, as he would have said, they would think about how Imam Hussein was killed, what happened to him, why he was killed. And people would think about that, and they would revolt against my government. And so this is a mentality that we have to put into our mindset, that ziyarat is not just a thing that we do. It's a thing that should change us from inside. When we say in, for example, ziyarat warith, that we've recited every Thursday since we were born, we've heard this ziyarat, and we talk about Fadhl Al-Abbas, and we talk about him as being this, we say, فَنِعْمَ السَّابِرُ الْمُجَاهِدُ الْمُحَامِ النَّاصِرُ, and we talk about him being a defender of his brother, and all of these things. These are not just things that should roll off of our tongue, but things that we again try to put into our life. And when you look at the text of the ziyarat, of ziyarat waritha, ziyarat ashura, ziyarat of Aminullah, Jamia, Kabira, whatever the case may be, each of these becomes actually a lesson in Shia ideology. It becomes a lesson in us understanding our imams, in understanding history, understanding aqaid, understanding the station of imamat. And it would become not something that we do, but rather the ziyarat would become something that we actually live within our lives. And this is what the sixth Imam alayhi salam shows us in the passage I want to mention tonight, and talk about 4 short points of Abul Fadl Al-Abbas in the words of Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salatu was-salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. As the sixth Imam begins to offer that tribute to Abul Fadl Al-Abbas, he first off begins by greeting him, by sending him in salutations. And he says it in a beautiful way. He says, Salamullah, may the blessings and peace of Allah, wassalamu malaikatil muqarrabin, and may the peace and blessings of the close angels of Allah, wa anbiya'il mursaleen, and on the chosen and the raised up prophets, wa ibadihi salihin, and all of the righteous servants of Allah, wa jami'i shuhada'i wa siddiqeen, and the peace and greetings of all of the shuhada, of all of the martyrs, all of the witnesses, and all of the truthful ones. وَالزَّاكِيَاتُ تَيِّبَاتِ فِيمَا تَخْتَدِي وَتَرُوهُ عَلَيْهِ يَبْنَ أَمِيرَ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. He asks Allah's blessings, all of the prophets' blessings, of all of the prophets to bless him, and all of the shuhada, all of the angels, all of these individuals. He says, may all of their peace and salutations and blessings be upon you, Yabna Amir al-Mu'mineen, O the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen. So here is our sixth Imam laying the foundation of who Abul Fadl Abbas is. That it's not just the sixth Imam coming to his grave and saying salam to him, but rather it's again 124,000 prophets. As we mentioned last night, that these individuals are not just individuals in our vacuum. They are the culmination of the message of 124,000 Anbiya and Mursaleen. And so the sixth Imam is sending the salutations of all of the prophets of Allah, without exception, onto Abul Fadl Abbas. And not only the prophets, but every single angel, those angels in close proximity to Allah. All of them are conveying their greetings to Abul Fadl Abbas. So what kind of a status this man must have for Allah, for the angels, the prophets, the shuhada, the siddiqeen, all of these people to gather together to send their salutations. And then the sixth Imam gets to the crux of what and how he addresses Abul Fadl Abbas. And he gives us 4 qualities that we have to again look for within our lives to see, are we on the same wavelength? Are we also those individuals who have traits that the Imam is looking for, that our Imam, our 12th Imam, is looking for? And the 6th Imam says, Ashhadu laka bit-taslim, wat-tasdiq, wal-Wafaa, wan-Naseeha, bi-khalif al-Nabi al-Mursal. He says that I bear witness that you had 4 qualities in relation to who? The one who was the successor of the Prophet who was sent. He talks about taslim, about submission to the Imam. He talks about tasdiq, about verifying and having firm belief and conviction in Islam and the Imam. He talks about Wafaa, about being loyal and being truthful to that covenant, the physical loyalty to the Imam, and Naseeha, to be an advisor to the Imam. Let's try to look at all of these 4 qualities that Abul Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam has, and hopefully we can try to imbibe these also within our lives, such that when the 12th Imam makes his advent, that we can possess some of these qualities within ourselves to be worthy of being amongst the helpers and assistants of Imam Sahab al-Asri wa Zaman. Salu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The first thing of the 6th Imam, he says that Abul Fadl al-Abbas had this quality of taslim, of submission to Allah and to the Messenger and to the Imam of the time. We are all Muslims. We have entered into submission to Allah. But even the Quran, when the Quran talks about Islam, the Quran gives us different indicators of what Islam is all about. When Amir al-Mu'mineen describes Islam in the very beautiful Hadith in Najul Balagha, he doesn't just say Islam is to believe. He goes into a level where he explains 12 to 15 levels of what Islam is all about. And when our scholars go on to define Islam and Iman and the difference between the two, they tell us that there are at least 18 differences between Islam and Iman. And when we look at Abul Fadl al-Abbas, we see that his level of Islam, of taslim, of submission, it has to be at the highest pinnacle for the 6th Imam, for the 4th Imam, for the 12th Imam to give him the tribute that they give to him within the ziyarat. And so when we look at the concept of taslim, what does it mean to submit? We realize that submission is not just to say, I'm a Muslim. Because if you look at the world today, 1.8 billion people claim Islam. But do 1.8 billion people follow the injunctions of Rasulullah in their day-to-day life? If that was the case, then we wouldn't be talking about a bombing in Baghdad today. We wouldn't be talking about the situation in Syria and around the world, because those people claim Islam, but obviously we realize that they are the furthest from the religion of Rasulullah. So taslim is something much greater than what we can think about it to be as just a word of submission. As Allah Subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, when He talks about submitting to Islam, He says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, udkhulu fi silmi kafa. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. Allah says, O you who believe, talking about us as mu'minun, as believers, أُدْخُلُوا فِي سِلْمِ كَافَةً. Enter into submission completely and wholeheartedly. Islam, as we have defined it before, or we have described it, Islam is not a buffet religion. Sometimes you go to these restaurants and it's a full buffet. You can pick and choose what you want. And if you don't like something, you leave it aside. But Islam came as a full package. It's a full meal deal. You can't say, I don't like this, I don't want to practice it. I mean, you can do it if you want, and you can get away with being a Muslim in this world, but we have to realize on the Day of Judgment, we'll be accountable to Allah. And Allah will ask us, and He'll say, why did you pick and choose from the religion that what you wished? And so when Abul Fadl al-Abbas alayhi salam is referred to as being one who had entered into taslim, into submission, we realize that his submission was at such a level that it was a complete submission into the religion of Islam. And this is evident from the fact that on the day of Ashura, and again all of it goes back to Ashura, because that is really where we see the greatness of Abul Fadl al-Abbas stand out. Not only him, but anybody. Because they say in English that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. But for those who are in taslim, who are in a state of submission, when the going gets tough, the tough stay there and they bear the difficulties. They put up with those challenges. And Abul Fadl al-Abbas did that with great bravery, that despite all odds being against him, we still see him going time after time, being there to defend his Mawla and his master, and to be there to help the women and the children of the caravan. And so this is taslim, is where you don't ask why. You don't ask the Imam, why should I do this? Why should I, pray this way? Why should I do a particular act of Islam? in a certain way. Taslim for us should be that Islam told us to do it. I submit wholeheartedly. I don't ask another question of the Imam. Like when that one companion, Harun, when he walks into the house of the Imam. And I'm sure we've heard the story, but the Imam says, Harun, walk into that fire pit. You know, they had those old ovens back in the day where you open a big door. And the Imam says, Harun, walk into the fire, walk into that oven. And without even taking his shoes off, he walks into the oven. And the companions are completely astonished. And the Imam is, he's sitting there doing what he has to do. These companions must be thinking this man is being burned to a crisp in the oven. And the Imam opens the door and Harun walks out. And he's not even burnt a bit. And why? Because he had full submission, full conviction in the Imam of his time. He didn't question the Imam, why should I do this? Why should I have a beard? Why should I wear hijab? Why should I eat halal? Why should I pray? All of these things. Why? He didn't ask those questions. He just did what the Imam did. In fact, Hadith tell us that the level of submission, the level of taslim that we should get to is if our Imam was with us and there was a pomegranate which was pulled from a tree and there was 100 trees in the orchard and the pomegranate was to be split in half, and if the Imam of our time was to say half the pomegranate is haram, half is halal, we're told in the Hadith that if we were to have that situation and we believe the Imam, then that is what true submission is to Islam. Why is half haram? Why is half halal? We don't know, but the Imam of the time would tell us. And if he told us it was haram, we should accept his word and not question his authority and not say, well, maybe he has a lapse in judgment. No, we have to enter into submission completely, be those who are true Muslims with true taslim to the commandments of Allah as embodied in the Quran, in the message of Rasulullah, and in the family of Rasul. Salu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The second thing that our sixth Imam says after taslim is tasdik. Tasdik is that he put his stamp of approval on the Imam. Not that the Imam needs an approval from anybody. I mean, the Imam is an Imam whether we accept him or not. Those thousands of letters of the Kufans who asked Imam to come to Kufa to be his Imam, to be their Imam, the Imam didn't need their stamp of approval and say, oh yeah, I've got 10,000, 20,000 letters, now I'm an Imam. No, even if one letter came, even if no letters came, the Imam is the Imam. But we're told that Fadhl Al-Abbas, that he enacted tasdik, that he had belief in the imamat of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And the proof of that is that he didn't question Imam anywhere in that journey, whether it be from Medina to Mecca, going from Mecca towards Kufa, ending up in Karbala. There was never a doubt in the head of Fadhl Al-Abbas that is what we're doing right? Are we on the right path? Is Islam the right thing for me to do? Is this the right religion? Because he would have had multiple opportunities to leave the battle, to leave the army of Imam. But we see that he didn't leave that side of his Imam. He stayed there through the thick and the thin. He didn't say, well, now times are difficult, let me leave. The Imam what's going to happen is going to happen to him. He's going to die anyway. No, he had that tasdeeq. He validated for himself that this is the Imam and that he has to follow him. And again, we have to reflect on this in our lives. When we recite the ziyarat of Fadhl Al-Abbas and we say that you did this tasdeeq, you validated the Imam in your own heart that he is the Imam. We as believers, whether it be here and we make the ziyarat of Fadhl Al-Abbas or we go to his haram in Karbala, we always have to be at that same level of validating and confirming that our Imam is truly the Imam of our time. You know, sometimes we get into this challenge. We sometimes hear things from other sources. And unfortunately, as much as goodness as we get from the YouTube and internet, as much problem as we have from these sources. Because you'll find videos online, which when you watch them, they'll question our iman. They'll question our identity. They'll put doubts into our heads, which in a way is good if you clear those doubts up. But sometimes those doubts are left to fester in our mind. and they're left to grow and grow and grow, and we don't get answers from the right sources. And we then begin to maybe distance ourselves from our Imam. We think, well, does the Imam exist? Did this happen? Did that happen? Is it possible for a person to live 12 centuries, 13 centuries? Where does he live? Does he eat? Does he marry? Does he have children? And sometimes we get so stuck in all these little things that we begin to lose sight of the big picture. We begin to lose sight of the big picture of the reality. And so we have to get into this mindset of, yes, studying, being critical, analyzing our history, analyzing our belief system, but doing so in the proper way, going through the proper channels, and trying to find answers to our questions, not trying to bring more questions to the questions that we already have. Sometimes we get into that routine where we keep asking questions and we become so convoluted and confused that we just give up hope. No, we ask the questions, the right questions from the right people to get the right answers, to clear those doubts within our mind. And when we get to that level, then we're able to confirm that faith that we have within ourselves, such that if the Imam were to return today, we wouldn't doubt him. We wouldn't say, where were you for 1,300 years? Where were you all of this time? No, because we would realize that whether the Imam came today or tomorrow or 100 years down the road or 1,000 years down the line, that would not make a difference in our Iman. And this is what the Hadith even tell us, the Hadith about our 12th Imam, that our validation of our faith should be such that were the Imam to come today or in 1,000 years, it would make no difference to us. It wouldn't make a difference whether the Imam was here today or tomorrow. So number two that the sixth Imam says is that Fadhl Abbas, he had tasdeeq, he validated the imamat of the Imam of his time in his own heart. Salu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The third thing that our sixth Imam says is a trait of the Imam is the concept of Wafaa, of being loyal to a cause. And Wafaa, as we know, is a trait that is talked about in the ziyarat, in many of the poetry just now, the poetry that we heard in Urdu about Abu Fadhl Abbas. We refer to him as being wafadar, or having this concept of wafadari, being loyal to the Imam. Again, we go back to that saying that when the going gets tough, the tough get going. But Abu Fadhl Abbas wasn't like that. He was loyal to the Imam right to the very end. He knew what was going to happen. We know when we read about his birth, and we're told that what Imam Ali told the family the day that he was born, that his 2 hands would be cut off, that this was going to happen. He knew about it, and he was told these stories. And yet he stayed with his Imam such that he was loyal to the Imam right to the very end. Again, a trait that we need to think about and reflect upon in our own lives. Are we loyal to the cause? You know, it's maybe abstract for us to say, well, our Imam isn't here, we're not fighting a battle, so we can't be loyal. It's difficult. But loyalty can take place at different levels of our religion. Loyalty can be at a community level. Look, today we know what's happened to our brothers and sisters and humanity in Fort McMurray. We've seen the footage on the news, repeated 24 hours a day. Are we loyal to them? To those who have lost their homes? And even if they haven't lost their homes aren't in that 10% that were destroyed. But their lives have been completely altered for this last week and for maybe many months to come. So are we loyal to them, to our Imam, to be loyal to these individuals? We have many new faces in our community today within this gathering. At Jummah, if you were here, you saw many new faces. Have we stopped to say, Salam, hi, how are you? Who are you? I haven't seen you before. Are you from Fort McMurray? Do you need any help? Have we stopped to introduce ourselves to our brothers and sisters who have come and who have left everything back home in their own homes? If we haven't, then we have to think about that. Yes, we can give money. And Canadians have given, I think, $67 million to Red Cross. And many of us have given thousands to this Jamaat. And our community in Toronto, as I was speaking to them, they were raising money, and they have been raising money for our brothers and sisters. And so all of that is happening at one scene, behind the scenes. But even more than the money, is to show this loyalty that we should be able to reach out to those who are around us, talk to them, greet them, ask them, do you need anything? Do you want to come over for dinner? Do you have kids? Our kids can play together, whatever it is, just to say salam to them at least. And this is this concept of being wafaa, being loyal to the cause. It's not just defending the Imam of the time, but defending and helping those who are the lovers of the Imam. This is what Tawalla and Tabara is all about. Tawalla is not just to love the Imam. Tawalla means love those who love the Imam. And these are our brothers and sisters. They love the Imam just as much as we do. And so we have to love them if we claim to love the Imam of our time. So trait number 3 that Abu Fadl Abbas has is al-Wafaa. He's loyal to the cause of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And last but not least is where the 6th Imam says he has the trait of Naseeha. Naseeha, of being one who gives advice or guidance or counsel to the Imam. Now we know that the Imams have knowledge of the unseen when they wish to have it, when Allah gives it to them. But at the same time, we know in the time of Rasulullah that he took advice, nasihat from the community. Battle of Khandaq is a prime example. And so Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam, one of the traits, and obviously much more can be said, but time is running out, so I will end it here. But one of the traits that we say about Abu Fadl Abbas is he had the trait of Naseeha, giving wise advice and counsel and guidance to the Imam of his time. Although Imam Hussain didn't need such advice, he's the Imam. He has the connection directly to the divine. But yet we refer to him as having this trait of one who was guiding and helping in that day of Ashura. So as we close, we ask Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's blessed day, as we mark the birth anniversary of Abu Fadl Abbas, that first and foremost, Allah accept this act of worship from us tonight. We ask Allah to give all of us the ability to be in Karbala, to pay our respects to Abu Fadl Abbas directly in front of his beautiful shrine in Karbala. And we ask Allah that if, when we leave this world, that we are able to benefit from the Shafaat of Abu Fadl Abbas alayhi salam. We ask Allah to forgive us our sins. We ask Allah to keep us all on the path of Islam, of Muhammad and Ali Muhammad. And we ask Allah to give the thawab of this majlis, the thawab of this gathering to the marhumin from our community and our family and our friends. And that Allah hasten the advent of our 12th Imam. And that we can be worthy of being amongst the helpers and assistants and adherents of the cause of our 12th Imam. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Let us end by reciting one salawat with one surah Fatiha for the thawab of all of the marhumin. Salu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.